There's a big difference between raising and raising well, and I think there's a lot of secretive do's and don'ts in this business. I think this is a huge one that cannot be underestimated. You have to be obsessed with what you're doing. It's hard to get someone else to believe in you and have conviction if you don't have conviction yourself. You have to be the person that believes in what you're building more than anyone else. Welcome to Trailblazers, the podcast where we sit down with contrarian tech leaders who found conventional success in unconventional ways. So on today's episode, we're going to be talking about 7 things I wish founders knew before raising their first check. I get asked this all the time. I get pitched by founders all day, every day, and I get asked, what are the things that you wish every founder knew? So I'm going to walk through 7 of them today, and let's get started. Okay, so founders obviously obsess over pitch decks, but investors actually make decisions based on other things, often unrelated to the deck. These are 7 things that I feel like you almost never hear, but you really, really should. And these insights, I hope, will save you and any founder that you know months of preparation and struggles with fundraising. So the first thing that you should know, investors often decide in the first 60 to 90 seconds. This is something people don't often believe me when I say, but it's really true. There's a few things. First, these are the things that really matter. Clarity. I think I've learned more and more with time that the clearer a business is, the more likely it is to get investor dollars. I don't know who says this, but someone says that when you say things very simply, very complicated things in a very simple way, it shows how well you know it, but also how intelligent that you are. I think clarity is really, really important. So if it isn't immediately clear what you're building, it's hard to get to a yes. Conviction in your own idea, that's also really important. You have to be the person that believes in what you're building more than anyone else. It's hard to get someone else to believe in you and have conviction if you don't have conviction yourself. And a lot of people struggle with imposter syndrome. Of course, at pre-seed, a lot of things are unproven, but you have to believe that you're really on the right track and that you're building something worthwhile. Problem heat, this is a really big one. It has to feel like the problem is a painkiller, not a vitamin. And when I say that, I mean it's something that is so hot and bothersome that people have to come to you for a solution versus, it's like kind of annoying, but it's not as much of a problem. Those things often don't really work in the venture world. They can work without raising venture for sure, but I think to really achieve venture scale and grow very rapidly, you need to have this like painkiller underneath it. The founder why. So this is really important. This is something that, and again, a lot of this stuff in the first 60 to 90 seconds, it's always hard to like portray, but you want to be on the right track. You want to be, when you're talking, you want to be hitting on these various points. And of course in your deck as well, but we're referring more to the first meeting. The founder why, like, why are you doing this? Why is this the thing that you're dedicating the next decade of your life to? And why are you the one to do it? Everyone always talks about product market fit, but you don't always hear as much about founder market fit. And I think that's something that investors talk about a lot. Like, yes, we can all agree that this certain space needs disruption and needs a change, but is this the one founder I want to bet on? Because by the way, if a VC takes a bet on you, they can't take a bet on your competitor, right? They can only have one winner in any given space. So why are you the one that they should bet on? And then distribution instinct. I think this one has a little bit of like Erica glasses on it, because for those of you who know our firm's thesis, you know that we care about this. But I am seeing this more and more amongst my friends, that you really need to think thoughtfully about your go-to-market and your distribution and what is unique about that. Because again, software is getting easier and easier to build. It only will more so with time. And so unfortunately, it can't just be a great product anymore. And I think founders who've built multiple times know that you can't just build a great product and your customers will come, right? You have to actually get customers. How do you do that? That's go to market. So I think showing that you have a distribution instinct and a go-to-market plan that is either somewhat proven or you have very strong instincts that it will do well is very important. This is what doesn't move the needle. Really fancy market slides. I think keeping it actually quite simple is really important. I always tell people, instead of having like a whole competitor landscape, which can be helpful, I actually like hearing like who is your number one biggest competitor and understanding why, and sort of comparing actually just your company and one other company. I think that can be often, again, simpler is easier and better. Long introductions, everything. Again, it's just short, sweet, simple, to the point. And then overproduced decks. I think that it can't be sloppily put together, but it shouldn't feel like you spent 1,000 hours on it. It should feel like you're really busy building. You whip something up that's thoughtful and tasteful, and then you're moving on. Okay, so that's the first thing. It's sort of like investors decide very quickly, and here are some tips of things to pay attention to and not so much. The second thing that I wanted to talk about is that distribution matters more than product at pre-seed. And this is something that we talk about a lot at my firm, and I really feel that this is becoming more and more true by the day. Code is cheap and go-to-market is very hard, and creative go-to-market is really difficult. And I think, there's a lot of ways that investors evaluate distribution. I get asked this a lot, like, how do I know if my distribution is any good? How do I know if it's actually unique? I think the most important things to ask yourself are, do you know your own wedge? Like, what is your wedge into the market? A lot of people try to tackle everything all at once, when in reality, that's not how you get your most excited, enthusiastic customers. You have to be very clear on what you're going after first. I'm actually thinking of one company that I spoke with very recently where really brilliant founders, really exciting business, very exciting product, but the distribution is quite vague. I keep saying narrow it down. And this is the feedback they're getting from a lot of folks. Do you understand where your users live online? Are you speaking to them? This is something, again, we talk about a lot at my firm, but this is very important. Where do your users spend time? Where should you be finding them? Now, are they mostly offline? That's quite difficult. How can you find them if they are? What social channels are they mostly on? What types of content do they enjoy? How many hours in a day do they actually even spend online consuming content? What is their purchasing power, right? Like, really understanding your user, but especially understanding where they live online and what are other companies, as an example, that they support. Do they have a content or community point of view? This is something that I think about a lot. When you aggregate, where you think your customers are all together, what do they have in common? What is their point of view? Who are their favorite influencers? Where do they get their news? These are the kinds of things that will really start to paint that picture. You have to show a crisp, believable distribution path. I think this is something that a lot of people overlook. Again, they have a great product, but the distribution is very important. So that's something to think about as my second tip. Third tip is traction can be manufactured before you have a product. So I think a lot of people think that traction is revenue or it's users. And of course, those are great, right? If you have crazy signups or crazy revenue. But there's a lot of other ways that you can show traction. And I actually get asked this question a lot by pre-seed founders, like, what are other ways that we can show that we're onto something? And this is a very exciting potential business. So I wanted to list out some of the different ways you can show traction. One, wait lists. Like wait lists that you can very, very clearly attribute to people that are going to buy your product. It can't just be like a generic wait list that's like, if you're interested at all in X or Y, sign up here. No, it needs to be more specific. You need to really understand intent. But a wait list can go a very long way. Obviously, LOIs, letters of intent, from customers, that's obviously very helpful. It shows that once you go to market, they're going to want what you're building. Expert interviews, this is something that gets tossed around a lot. I think these are, everyone has mixed opinions on them, especially myself. A lot of experts want to get paid for their time, and so they'll give an interview on something that they maybe aren't actually an expert in. So I think what's really important is if you do want to lean into like interviews and testimonials from important people in the space that you're building in, that you really make sure they're credible, because a lot of those like expert networks, it's not always, it's like the incentives aren't always aligned. It's not always the right person that's giving you that feedback. Maybe you have like a WhatsApp or a Slack or a Telegram group where you're having very engaged members, very early adopters who are spending time gathering resources for you, giving feedback on the product. Like, it doesn't have to be a bunch, but it can be this like early beta group that's very excited. I've seen that work really well for certain companies. Cold outreach responses. So, if you are reaching out to certain people, whether it's customers, whether it's potential investors, whether it's potential hires, and they are very excited and they don't know you, that says a lot. If you can show succinctly that you understand a space very, very well and you're getting responses to your cold outreach, that speaks volumes. And then of course, like demo demand. And this is very specific to certain types of companies. But if you find that, again, you're getting just a lot more inbound and you're getting a lot of signups for your demos or to do demos, then that can show momentum. And you don't have to have a fully fleshed out product, but you can find other ways to show traction. On Trailblazers, we spotlight founders who succeed by doing things differently, not by following the playbook, but by rewriting it. Many of those unconventional builders and the VCs backing them run on Brex because it helps them scale with speed and focus. From smart corporate cards and high-yield banking to AI-powered expense management, Brex gives startups the financial stack they need from day one so they can spend more time building and less time managing back-office operations. More than 30,000 companies, from breakout startups like Anthropic and Cursor to global leaders like DoorDash and Plaid, trust Brex to help them spend smarter and move faster. That's why we, as a venture firm and also the podcast, run on Brex too. Sign up at brex.com/trailblazerspod to get started and claim exclusive rewards. That's brex.com/TRAILBLAZERSPOD. RocketReach is the leading sales and lead intelligence solution trusted by sales, marketing, recruiting, and business development teams to grow their businesses. Whether you're looking for a developer halfway around the world, a C-level executive in New York, or a potential investor in Silicon Valley, we connect you directly. With RocketReach, you can easily access the most comprehensive, accurate compilation of emails and phone numbers on Earth. That puts you in front of the right people faster and backs you up with a database that reaches across industries, markets, and titles, using AI to continually improve the quality of your contacts. With RocketReach, you can reach anyone so you can reach higher. Many of you know I love cold outreach. It's been the root of many of my success so far, and this is the tool that I've used the whole time. Trailblazer listeners get 15% off any plan at rocketreach.co/trailblazers. That's rocketreach.co/trailblazers. The fourth tip is founder market fit is more important than market size slides. So this is so important for pre-seed. Yes, the market needs to be big enough, for sure. That's like table stakes if you want to raise venture capital. But so much of it is actually about the founder and betting on a founder who's going to figure it out. They will grow the market if they need to. They will explore a different market if they need to. It's really, really a lot about the founder. So here are some things, when you hear people say it's about the founder, what does that mean? Here are some things to think about. Lived experience. So there's actually, funny enough, I was talking to an investor and they say they like backing people who have worked in that industry. Even if they're building for like retail, they want someone that like worked in anthropology. Like they want someone who's like actually done the thing. If they are building some blue collar vertical AI thing, they want someone who actually maybe took 6 months or a year off from their life to go work, in a construction zone or actually was deep in the weeds. Lived experience is very important. Professional depth. This is another one. Really having not only depth of knowledge in a certain career, but depth of network. I think that that's really, really huge. If you're going to be building for in a certain sector for about a decade, you ideally already know a lot of people in that sector and you know a lot about it already. Earned secrets. This kind of comes with like the lived experience part. Earned secrets can be either you went and got professional experience working somewhere, or it can be just like a personal anecdote, like let's say you're building something for the single mother community or the caregiver community. Maybe you yourself are a single mother or have been a caregiver, and so you know it yourself. And you have all these earned secrets about this community, or this ecosystem, because you've lived it yourself. Obsession, I think this is a huge one that cannot be underestimated. You have to be obsessed with what you're doing. And I think I'm in particular really crazy about this one. Obsession can come through in the form of like high energy. It can come in the form of, if I ask you where you're getting your information, it's like all day, every day, you're listening to podcasts, you're speaking with people, you're consuming it, all your friends are in this space. You're just like so deep that it's overwhelming. But I think a lot of obsession is actually about energy and showing that you are just like an Energizer bunny about this certain topic. A problem you can talk about for hours without prep. I feel like that is actually like a really good tell for founders who aren't sure what to build in. If you can sit down and you can talk at the Thanksgiving dinner table for 2 hours on and on about a specific topic or a specific sector, that's probably the space you should be building in. And if you can't, that's probably not the right space for you. So I like that actually as even like a test of before you've decided on the market and the problem, like, is that the area you should be building in? I really think Your story as a founder is the edge. Again, it's not about the market, it's about you as the founder. So however you can incorporate your lived experience, your obsession, your depth, professional depth, your network, all those things, the better off you'll be. That's my fourth tip. My fifth tip is that the best founders actually make it very easy to say yes, and the investor wants to say yes too. This is something that I feel like most people don't talk about. There's a handful of firms who meet with founders and maybe they're not actively deploying, and I think that's really wrong. So of course there's going to be the outliers. But on the whole, the investor wants to say yes too. And the best founders make it really easy to say yes. These are the things they do. So they don't oversell like crazy. I think that's an important thing to note. They're not like going through their pitch deck and just talking at you. That usually doesn't work. It's more about it being a conversation that is mutually beneficial and sparking the imagination and ideas on both sides. And I think that there's certain things that you can do to position yourself so that investors are excited to say yes. The few things I just came up with were being very prepared. Obviously, that's very important. Being very concise. I think this is one thing too. It's not great to ramble. This is something I've had to work on. When you often are very obsessed with something, you can talk on and on and on about it, but you have to have the EQ to know when to pause in the conversation, when to ask the question. So being concise is very important, not just talking at someone. Being very responsive, really listening to the questions that are being asked and responding to that question versus just saying what you want. Being very consistent. This is really important. I think this is actually even beyond in the meeting. It's having consistent follow-ups. It's doing what you say you're going to do. Because actually, it's important for the investor to do that too. But I think that the founder really needs to show consistency because it's all a test for how they're going to be when they are actually running the company. And then being very organized. I think like running a fundraising process in particular and being a founder, it's all process. And I think being very organized is actually super underrated, and it can instill a lot of confidence in the investor that when they give you a yes and they give you their money, you're going to handle it and manage it very well. So, there's a lot of ways that you can set yourself up for success. I think some of those, adjectives I mentioned are some of the big ones, but know that the investors want to say yes too. And, they will be pattern matching with all of these things. They will be pattern matching your professionalism. They will pattern matching your consistency, your organization skills. And, if you're doing it better than most, they're more likely to say yes. One other note on that in terms of just being like prepared and concise. I think it's really important that you follow up quickly with investors and that when they ask for things like, they have a few extra questions, that you reply pretty quickly. This is why I always say like fundraising is a full-time job and you have to be very responsive, because if you're not, often it's a signal to the investor that maybe you won't be down the line. The next tip that I wanted to share, and this is kind of on the traction point earlier, but it's slightly different, is that momentum is greater than everything. There's a lot of things here that I'm saying are important. The founder story is important. Traction is important, but you can manufacture it. Momentum is really everything, especially when you're mid-fundraise. So, investors, like all humans, have a bit of FOMO. And I think if things are moving quickly, then they're often ready. It forces them to make a decision faster. So different things that count as momentum, just to give you some food for thought. Obviously, shipping any sort of updates. That can go over very well. You can talk about all the new product features that you're adding. You can talk about like the teammates that you're adding that contributed to shipping that update. Customer quotes that are happy, or even customer quotes that weren't happy, but you fixed and you learned from it. That stuff can show momentum. Rapid iteration. I think shipping updates quickly and, pivoting as needed and hearing feedback and moving quickly, that stuff all really helps. Pilot signups, which we had talked about. Team additions, this is a really big one. So let's say you're in the middle of a fundraise and you feel like things are stalling. It doesn't necessarily have to be hiring someone full time, but adding someone as a small angel investor, adding someone who is more of an advisor. I mean, advisors is more of a complicated conversation, but bringing on someone who's a really incredible fractional designer or, developer, whatever it might be. When you can attract really top talent, that is a really strong signal of momentum that you'll be able to hire more top talent. I think the biggest thing is that you have to show that small wins are happening. And I'm a big proponent of when you're going through a fundraise, like sending updates pretty quickly, one after the next. As soon as someone signs on, you're just like, hey, we just got this lead. Oh, we just got this check. Where are you at? How are you feeling about this? Oh, we actually just shipped this thing. Oh, our numbers actually hit this number. And just again, it's all about momentum, and small wins do stack up. And you really do want to show that things are happening. If you work in venture or startups, you know the constant juggling act. Replying to messages from co-investors, founders, LPs, customers, and teammates all hitting your personal number. I know this very well. We all hand out our cell, which means your EA can't help an iMessage, and important threads get buried. That's why I'm very excited about Quo, formerly OpenPhone. It's built for founders and investors like us who want communication that feels personal but stays organized. Quo gives you a dedicated business line on your existing cell phone. And if you already have a business number, you can bring it with you for free. Plus, you'll get call summaries, transcripts, and an AI voice agent called Sona that can answer and schedule when you're offline. We're actually cooking up something fun with the Quo team right now and using that same voice AI tech in a new way for our firm. More soon, but it's a great reminder that you can use voice AI to stay top of mind of your customers' needs. Quo is trusted by over 90,000 businesses and rated number 1 on G2 for customer satisfaction. You can get 20% off your first 3 months at quo.com/trailblazers. That's quo.com/trailblazers. I've actually used Gusto at 3 different companies, and every time it's been such a relief. It's simple, it's reliable, my paycheck was always on time, no drama. And unlike the big clunky payroll systems out there, Gusto is affordable and designed for teams like ours. Gusto is online payroll and benefits software built for small businesses. It's all-in-one, remote-friendly, and incredibly easy to use, so you can pay, hire, onboard, and support your team from anywhere. Try Gusto today at gusto.com/trailblazers and get 3 months free when you run your first payroll. That's 3 months of free payroll at gusto.com/trailblazers. One more time, gusto.com/trailblazers. So the 7th tip is that don't be afraid to ask investors for help. And most investors, the best ones, will be excited to help you and support you early and show that they can bring value as well. So this is another tip I want founders to know. Investors really love founders that ask for input early because it means that they are likely to come to them if things are maybe not going so well down the line, and they will be open and communicative. It shows that they're humble enough to know where they need support. So like maybe they feel like their brand needs a refresh, or maybe they really need their founding product designer, or maybe they really want just an extra few angels in their round. They go to their investors and they say like, hey, can you help me with this ask? It's really great because it shows that you trust the investor already and that they can then bring value right away. Founders who iterate based on feedback. So this is a big one. I think like founders know their businesses better than anyone, for sure. But I think the founders that can hear feedback and are willing to iterate and show that they incorporate it, or they're thinking about it, or even they thought about it and they don't agree with it, that's all fine. But they're willing to iterate and like spar with often investors who have spent time in that space or who have just pattern matched and can see other things that have gone right or gone wrong with what they're doing. Founders who show that they can absorb and apply. I think that's really huge too. Like the more that you can show that you are hearing the feedback, and it doesn't have to be about your business. It can be like your team structure. It can be about how you're fundraising. All this stuff can go a very long way. And I think investors don't expect perfection. They just expect movement and trajectory. And I think that's really the takeaway. And don't be afraid to ask for help, because the best ones are so excited to open their network to you. They have full conviction and belief in you once they've already come on board. So in closing, there's a big difference between raising and raising well. And I think there's a lot of secretive do's and don'ts in this business. And for those who are willing to do their homework and listening to podcasts like this and meet with people in the industry, they can set themselves up better for success and understand how the ecosystem is thinking about them and thinking about their business. Another piece I want to add for closing is that fundraising is a rehearsal for company building. And I really think more people need to hear that. Like the way that you run your fundraising process, the way that and it's not even just in how quickly you reply or how organized you are, but it's in how enthusiastic you are. It's in who you choose to bring on board, the qualities you look for, how you negotiate terms, right? All that stuff is a precursor to what's to come. And I think, the way you run your fundraise is a very strong indication of how you're going to sell to customers, how you're going to hire top talent. And you're going to look for people that mesh with that process. And just know that the way that you run it is going to be very indicative to your investors. So run it the way that you would be proud to say, the way that I ran this fundraise is how I'm going to run the rest of my business. And investors are also not just evaluating your pitch. Like I said, they're evaluating all the other elements of it. Another piece of advice, find the believers. Don't try to convince the non-believers. I literally said this yesterday on a call with a founder. I was like, you're awesome. You're going to do great things. I just don't believe in the same thesis you do. Like, we don't see the world the same way. Doesn't mean I don't think that he's going to totally crush it. But you got to find people who believe in the same future. There's another founder I actually talked to yesterday. It was the same thing. They're building in healthcare, and the future of healthcare that they see is not the same future of healthcare that I see or want to see. And that's okay. They're going to have plenty of people that are lining up to give them checks. It's not worth our time for them to try to convince me. We just see different futures. So I think it's most important to just find the people who already believe in the same future as you and who believe in you. Don't try to convince people who don't believe. And then the last thing that I wanted to close with is there will be a first check investor who jumps in before anyone else has. And they have their own conviction regardless of that. That's something that we pride on ourselves on at my firm. Literally just this week, we committed to a deal, first check in. There's plenty of people who will jump in and will support you, even if no one else is attached. So if you're in the middle of a fundraise now or you're going to fundraise, you're worried about building this momentum and having this perfect story. Yes, that's all great and that all helps you. But just know there's going to be people out there who will believe in you before anyone else. You just have to do the reps to find them. So I am wishing you the best in your fundraising process. I hope these 7 tips helped and a bit of a peek behind the scenes on how I think about it and maybe some of the things that aren't discussed as publicly. So thanks for tuning in. On Trailblazers, we're always talking about multiplying your impact, and that's exactly what Athena helps you do. Athena pairs you with a world-class executive assistant who becomes a true force multiplier for your business and your life. Working with my Athena assistant has been transformative. Gab was instrumental in raising Park Rangers Capital's fund in ways that I could have never imagined an assistant could contribute, from closing 6-figure checks to identifying new LPs we should meet to matching my tone perfectly in follow-up emails. He's elevated my capacity as a founder by giving me more time to focus on the highest leverage work. Athena isn't just about scheduling meetings, it's about unlocking leverage. Hundreds of founders, investors, and executives trust Athena to free their time and scale their impact. Athena is offering our listeners $2,000 off for their first year of service and priority onboarding. And you want that, trust me, there's a very long wait list. When you're ready to multiply your impact and free up time for the things only you can do, go to athenago.me/Erica-Wenger. That's athenago.me/ERICA-WENGER. Thanks so much for listening to the Trailblazers podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to follow the show so you never miss an episode. You can also support our work by sharing it with a friend or leaving a quick review. It helps more contrarian builders find us. For more on Park Rangers Capital and our community of elephant founders, head to parkrangerscap.com or find me online at Erica_Wenger. Until next time, keep trailblazing.